All right, hey again, folks. We are going to start with the next section on music theory, which is going to be form. Now, we're not going to get too in depth here because form is a very expansive subject. Go into a lot of different things, a lot of very small detail. I don't want to do that with you. What I would rather do is look at the bigger picture of everything, looking at the surface level, getting an idea of what the different types of form in music are, the different elements that go into that, and just a very basic overview of a couple of the different types of forms that we run across when we are analyzing music. So, we're going to get started here, and we're going to take a look at this. So, it says, what is form? So, form is a little bit more of a complicated subject, but we're going to simplify this. Simply put, form is the structure of a musical composition. It is what goes into making that musical composition work the way that it does. So it's a lot of different elements. And those elements, the structure, is determined by structural phenomena, which is a really fancy way of saying all the different pieces that make up the songs that we listen to. So structural phenomena can mean a lot of different things. We can talk about cadence, we can talk about tonality or tempo, meter, rhythm, timbre, that word right there. Looks like timber, it's timbre. We'll discuss what that means in a minute. Motive, and there are several other ones that I didn't want to get into because, like I said, this is a surface level kind of thing that we're trying to do here with form. So, the important thing to note is that all of these phenomena are going to combine together in order to create a composition in a coherent manner. Now, can you make a composition without these structural phenomena, without form? Sure, you could. However, to make it a coherent song that follows all those conventions, we are going to have to use those structural phenomena and make sure it adheres to a type of form that we're going to talk about in a little while here. There's a lot of music out there that does not follow these form elements that we're going to be talking about here, but I would say a very good majority of the songs that you listen to are going to have some kind of form to them another. Now, they might be a little bit of a deeper level form than what we're working on right now. However, they do contain these different structural phenomena, they do contain these different elements. So, speaking of structural phenomena, let's discover what those mean. So, there are a bunch of different terms that I listed on the last page of this slideshow. We're going to go through these and I'm going to try to explain to you what each of these are. Now, if you're thinking, hey, why are we talking about structural phenomena when you're talking about form? It's because those two things go hand in hand. Structural phenomena is part of form, it's how we define what the different sections of the form is. So, structural phenomena can be a lot of different things. They are elements that take place within a composition. So it's things like cadence, which is talking about a point of relative cessation of musical activity. Now, that's really big and fancy. What it really comes down to is that it's a stable point of arrival. It's when the melody or the harmony or the rhythm kind of slows down and gives you that moment where you can kind of breathe for a second. Now, does this mean that it's always on a rest? No, absolutely not, but that's a good thought. So, what it means is that it feels like you could be steady for a moment rather than having things moving all around or big leaps or a lot of really fast notes. There is that kind of stuff that slows it down and makes it feel stable. That's what we're referring to when we talk about the word cadence. The next one there is tonality. So it's the key or mode a piece is written in. Now, we did discuss when we were talking about the piano and everything, the different modes. And what modes do, and the keys and things like that, is they convey the mood of the composition. So not only does it tell you what note is your home base, where you can go to kind of feel like you are steady and home, it tells you how the piece is meant to be feeling. Like, is it a darker, kind of more minor sound that is giving you these sadder or angry or more negative kinds of emotions? Or is it a major piece that is giving you these things like being proud or excited or happy, various different things like that? Tonality is a really unique structural phenomena. It's one that I'm going to actually end up doing a whole lesson on later on here because there's a lot of stuff that goes into tonality. Now, the reason we're talking about it with form is because when the tonality changes, that can often be an indication that we are doing something different within that form. So, talking about tempo. So, tempo is simply the speed of the beat, it's how fast or slow that music is going to go. And again, talking about structural phenomena, if tempo changes suddenly, or if it starts to gradually slow down or speed up, we can see, hey, maybe there's a new part of that form coming up. Related to tempo is this idea of meter. So, the wordy kind of musical definition is the organization of subdivisions within beats or the beats within the measures. So, what that really means is how you are feeling that music. Are you feeling it in what's called a duple time signature, where we have two beats, so like up, 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 or are you feeling it in a triple meter, where you have three subdivisions? Up, 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 up. So when I'm clapping is that big beat, is that kind of tempo, and the subdivision is those smaller beats, whether it was two per clap or three per clap. And again, with structural phenomena, when that changes, oftentimes that signals that we are going to a new part of our form. Rhythm is the length of the individual note, as we've been discussing before. And again, when it changes, often if things get shorter or longer, all of a sudden we can kind of see, hey, this is going to change the sound of this composition. So maybe this is a new section. Maybe this is a different part of the form. Timbre is a really interesting musical term. What timbre is the tone color. So it's the unique way individual voices and instruments sound. It's how you know the difference between my voice and your classroom teacher's voice, or your parents' voices, or your grandparents, or guardians, or whoever. It's the way you can tell what a trumpet sounds like versus a saxophone, or a clarinet versus the flute. It's how you can tell what the actual sound of an instrument is. And what they use this for with structural phenomena and changing in forms is often they'll pass the melody to different instruments or different voices, and that will give you an indication that something is perhaps going to change. And the last one that I chose for you was motive. Now, I know that I've given you a lot of musical terms with the last couple of minutes here. It's okay. We are going to continue talking about these sorts of things. There are, I may not do lessons on every single one of these things that's listed, but there are a lot of lessons that we can do with this. Continue with our music theory trend. But let's talk about motive here. So, motive, that last one, is a recurring, prominent, melodic, or rhythmic event. So, recurring means it happens over and over again. So, a motive is a recognizable piece of the song that you hear it and you're like, wait a minute, I've heard that before. And you hear it somewhere else in that composition, and it can signal that you are going back to a section that made use of that motive. So, for example, if you hear a certain melody in the beginning of a song, and then you have a bunch of other stuff, and then you hear that same melody coming back, it kind of triggers your brain and says, hey, this is familiar. This might be a section that I've heard before, and the composer might be reusing part of that section. So, all of the structural phenomena that we're talking about here are ways that we can kind of tell what's happening with the form. We can hear where there are different sections. We can hear how things are going to change because often on, for example, a cadence, you're going to hear everything kind of pause for a moment and then start up again. And that can tell you that there's a new section. If the key or the mode changes, if it goes from major to minor or minor to major, it can tell you that something new is happening there as well because it sounds like an event to our ears. So if you want to think of it in like, programming terms for a second, these are all events that signal that something else is going to happen. So now that we've gotten at least a little bit of an idea about structural phenomena, we're going to talk about two different types of form today. The types of form that we're going to be talking about, even though there are a lot of them, are all going to use the same structural phenomena. No matter what type of form that you have, it uses those same structural phenomena. Some are more composite. Some of those compositions are more complicated than others. Some of them are very simple. But I would argue that just about 99% of songs, I mean, maybe if you write something completely random, would have some kind of form that goes along with them. So even all the kids' songs, even the songs on the radio, they all have some kind of order that the pieces are going to go in. So the two that we are going to talk about today are called binary and ternary form. We're going to discuss those in depth in just a moment here. But when talking about form, we're typically going to break a composition into sections. So it's rather than looking at the entire thing all at the same time, we are going to look at smaller pieces to help us kind of manage what we are seeing. Each is going to be labeled by a letter. Every time that you get something new, it's a new section which is different from the one before, we are going to apply a new letter. Now, if the same section returns later, for example, whether it's exactly repeated, like they copy and pasted it, or it's got slight variations, but you can tell it's the exact same thing, we're going to use the same letter again to indicate the repeated section. This should make a little bit more sense in the next couple of slides here when we're talking about binary and ternary forms. So let's talk first about binary form. So binary form is a type of musical form that consists of two parts. Now, if you are thinking about code, for example, if you're thinking about computer code, binary means it is using just two pieces, ones and zeros. Binary form has two different parts. They are labeled starting with A and ending with B. So that means that the two sections we have are going to be the A section or the B section. Now, in binary form, the A section is typically referred to as the theme, and the B section is referred to as development. Theme, of course, is a composition is a recognizable tune. It's the melody that you hear. Most of the time, it's at the introduction level. It's at the beginning of the thing, but oftentimes you can kind of hum the tune and you can get what the theme is going to be. So the development of a composition is going to take some ideas of the theme, expand on them. Now, they don't have to be directly related to one another, they can change. They are going to have some elements that are in common most of the time, but you're going to hear that it is a different sort of thing that you're listening for. So we're going to take a listen to this right here. This is going to be the composition Greensleeves, and we're going to listen first, and then on the next page, we are going to be able to hear kind of see, we've already heard, we can see where those different pieces are, those elements. So let's take a listen real quick here. So as you were listening there, you could hear a point where it changed and it turned into something a little bit different. So if we take a look at the actual sheet music for it, we're going to see that we have this going on right here. So the beginning theme right there. Bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum bum bum, etc. I'm not going to sing the whole thing for you because you just heard it. But we can hear that that's the A section. But when the B section comes in, we even hear, and it looks different too. Bum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum bum bum. Now it does have some elements that are similar, like the ending of these phrases is very much the same. However, the way that it starts off, the rhythms are, even though they're similar, it does have some different elements to it. The melodies are different, they're in a different register. They have a different motion. This is moving up and then down. This is moving down and then back up again. So the motion is different. We can see pretty clearly that the A section and the B section are different. Now, the reason that we don't have another A or anything else that ends on B is because if you look, it doesn't go back to that A section. It doesn't do it again. Now, in the real song, do people repeat things and make it a little bit longer because otherwise it's only a minute long? Yes, of course they do. However, looking at the composition itself, just the tune of Green Sleeves, this is your A section right there, ending at measure number 9. And from 10 to 17, right there, that is your B section. All right? So hopefully you can start to see a little bit of that for our binary form, those two different parts. Now we're going to move on to ternary form. So ternary, which is a little bit of a weird word, but that's okay. Ternary is a type of musical form that consists of 3 parts this time. Each part is labeled, starting with A, which progresses into B. It ends this time with a repeat of the A section. Now, this is really important because each of them have an A section and a B section. They each have a theme and development, binary versus ternary. However, we have this return of the A section called the recapitulation right here. So even though it's still the theme and then the development, it is the recap, the recapitulation, that really makes this ternary form because it comes back again. So these are the same definitions as before, the recognizable tune and developing the ideas of the theme. But the recapitulation is a return of the theme after the development section. Now, this can be a direct repeat. It can be exactly the same, or there can be little tiny embellishments, little tiny things that change. Now, if everything that's in there changes, that's no longer the A section coming back. That would be something different. However, we're going to use a melody that you're going to all recognize, and you're going to hear the very clear A, B, A come through here. So let's take a listen to this real quick, this Mozart composition. So, were there some embellishments in there? Yes, of course. It's Mozart. He likes to do those little bit of like those trills or the little moving around embellishment parts. However, that's not a huge deal. We're going to take a look at the actual music for it because this is the simplified version of it. Now, if you're looking there, we're all familiar with the tune Twinkle, Twinkle, Star. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. So we've got that main melody, this rising kind of melody, this rising and then falling. Now, when we get to the B section here, this is different. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. It doesn't sound like our A section, so we know that this is something different. This is development, this is changing what we have already heard. Now, if you look down here and you know the tune, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, when it happens again, is a direct repeat of our A section. So this is going to be just our A section coming back again and repeating to round out our form, and we get this A, B, A, that ternary composition. So even though it's a simple tune, it can still have a very interesting way of having that form with that theme, the development, and then the restatement or recapitulation of that theme. Right? So the only thing we've got left is this little recap here so that this video doesn't get too horribly long on you. But anyway, there's all good information in here. This is some high level stuff, and I'm really happy to be sharing this with you. So to recap right here, form is the structure of a musical composition. The structure of the composition is determined by various different types of structural phenomena. Now, we did talk about those. Feel free to rewind the video and look at them one more time. That's okay. We don't need to list them all out. You're not going to be held accountable for each one is. However, you should have an awareness of what each one is. So the types of form that we talked about today were binary form, which is a type of form that consists of 2 parts labeled A and B. The A section is usually the theme, and the B section is usually the development. In ternary form, it's a 3-part musical theme labeled with A, goes to B with that variation, or not variation, rather development. Call it variation, but that's okay. So it has that theme for A, the development for B, and then a repeat, a restatement of the section for the A section, which is often called the capitulation. All right. So we are done with the lecture portion of this. You're going to have some self check questions again, where you are going to get to kind of show what you know. So please head on back over to your lesson to get going on those self check questions.